When it comes to the U-Boys in Act 5, they've gotten some pretty good treatment lately. Disregarding Yuya, because his deck's a mess and you couldn't pay me to play it, Yutei recently got a pretty cool dragon, as well as cross support for Raid Raptors, so you can play both of your edgy decks at once. Yu-Gi-Oh on the other hand may or may not have gotten good cards, I don't actually know, but it doesn't really matter since he got a huge goddamn motorcycle. What about the best one? I mean, what about Yuri? Well, he got some attempts at support in the Dark Legendary Duelist set, but that didn't really do too much to actually make the deck playable, instead just giving anyone who runs Super Poly a few more options. So why didn't it work too well? Well, 2 words. Predator counters. Despite a ton of their monster effects relying on your opponent having predator counters on them, there really wasn't a great reliable way to actually put them on. Not to mention that, you know, there isn't really going to be any monsters to place counters on when you're going first. Not being strong enough to go second, but lacking a real end board going first, they were in a bad place, being basically unplayable as anything other than an engine. That is, until Dimension Force. They received 5 new cards, and each one is a winner. First up we have a low-level fusion that's very easy to make, requiring any 2 Predaplants. Ambulo Melody's level also makes it an instant fusion target, which is pretty nice. As for its effects, well, when summoned it searches anything in archetype, making access to Scorpio way more consistent. Then, to make the deck even more consistent, it can tribute one of your monsters to then summon another Predaplant from the deck. If your opponent happens to have any predator counters on them, you can even tribute their cards, which, while maybe impractical, could be pretty strong. This access to anything in their deck from basically any fusion spell is great for this deck, and basically means that you can actually combo reliably, instead of just hoping that your hand is playable. They also got a new boss monster with a powerful effect. As a quick effect, you get an Omni Negate, in exchange for it needing to tribute something with a predator counter on it. However, this can be an opponent's monster too, which pairs super well with Dragostapelia, who can place counters as a quick effect. Also, when it goes to the graveyard, it can revive itself once, and since the first effect is a soft once per turn, that actually gets you another whole negate and tribute. Their main deck got some new tools as well, and for what is maybe the first time on this channel, it has some pendulum monsters that I'm actually going to be using. I know, it's shocking, but don't worry, they're mostly just used for their fusion effect. The Follicula, a scale 0 pendulum monster, can act as a fusion spell when placed in the scales. This plays super well with Triantis, a scale 8 pendulum, who allows you to use pendulum monsters as materials for fusion summons. So see, no cause for any alarm, there's barely any actual pendulum stuff going on. Also, when you fuse away Triantis using Bufo's effect, or any effect since it does just work with polymerization as well, you get to place predator counters on everything you own, or even on opponent's monsters if they already have some of them out, which means the deck now actually has a very good, reliable way of actually placing predator counters. This alone basically turns on all the effects of your other cards, so you really want to use this as a fusion at some point in your combo. Oh, and Bufolicula will then add it back to your hand, letting you be able to use this effect again next turn. Finally, Predaplant Biblisp, a level 1 monster, searches any Predaplant monster when sent to the graveyard. Being a level 1, that already opens up some options, but more importantly, it's a dark type, so it's very easy to send to the graveyard thanks to Branded Fusion. This card alone is a great reason to run a small branded engine, since you'll consistently be able to send Biblis to the graveyard to then gain access to Scorpio, while getting out fusion monsters like Dragostapelia, giving you a negate and an easy way to place predator counters. Altogether, thanks to this new support, the Predaplant deck went from a clunky Super Poly deck who was its own worst enemy, to a consistent combo deck churning out multiple fusions per turn while breaking your opponent's boards. Want to see how? Well, keep watching then. So here's the deck clocking in at 42 cards. Don't worry, it's still very consistent, but if you're worried about the lack of hand traps, I'll be telling you which cards you can cut to make more room, as well as offering another version of this deck on my Patreon. To start off with the Predaplant monsters, you'll be running 3 of each of the new pendulums. You could cut Triantis down to 2 or even 1, but since it's such an important way to spread predator counters, I like playing it out more, especially because it helps with going second. We then run a package of 3 Ophrys Scorpio and 2 Darlingtonia Cobra. 2 of the latter since Scorpio only summons from the deck, so we don't want to miss the opportunity of that by drawing it. It also allows you to use this effect twice, which is great to grab a Super Poly on turn 3 for example. Then there's the 3 Biblisp, since it's such a great discard as well if you draw it. I suppose you could cut this down to 1 as well, but since it's also a free material quite often, it just seems like a waste to not run it at 3. Then run 1 or 2 Chlamydia Sundews. It's an extra fusion enabler when summoned from the deck by Ambulo Melodies, and it can even help break your opponent's board when going second sometimes in the right situation. Banks Yoga is also optional, but a searchable Kaiju that only needs Predator counters to work is a bit hard to pass up. Saracenian has some battle phase effects, but it's mostly used as a fusion material to give you a search of a Predap card, which does include the trap. Next, 3 copies of Lonefire also means 3 copies of Scorpio, which is the best starter in this deck. Next we run 1 Fallen of Albers, since we need to send him to the graveyard to use Stranded Fusion. After that we run the Edgem package of 3 Chain, 3 Patchwork and 2 Polymerization. Chain makes for a great discard for the use of Scorpio's effect, ending up giving you a fusion spell and card advantage. It also doesn't hurt that they're all dark monsters, so they can actually be used for fusion materials pretty often. Instant Fusion can make their new level 5, which allows you to focus on making some of the higher cost fusions without needing to first make it out of Predaplants in your hand. Ultra Polymerization not only gives you a fusion monster, but it gets the materials back, while also being searchable by Scorpio. This card is an integral part of the Predaplant combos, but 1 copy should be enough since you do just search it anyway. I also run a single copy of Super Poly, since again it's searchable and can break boards. I don't run more in the main deck because you don't really want to see it going first, and you'd rather side it in going second in exchange for some of the traps. Run 3 Branded Fusion because it does so much for the deck with basically no downside. Preda Practice is a fun card, letting some of the monsters you search later on in your combos like Saracenian hit the field. Plus it's another way of getting to Preda Planning, which you can run between 1 and 3 copies of. The reason you'd possibly run it at 3 is because, losing the coin flip, it can be a fairly good discard, turning your fusions into destruction effects, further helping to pick apart boards. Going first though, you'll use it on your opponent's turn to send a Biblisp, searching a card while also covering everything in Predator counters, making your fusion monsters so much more powerful. For the extra deck, unsurprisingly, it's mostly fusion monsters. You'll run 3 of the new Predaplants since it's a great starter and very easy to make, and then 1 or 2 Chimera Flesias since it's a useful stepping stone for your fusion combos, as well as letting you search a fusion spell in the next standby phase. Then run between 1 or 2 Starving Venoms as a great Super Poly target, and Greedy Venom as an alternative choice for breaking boards. Preda Power is strong, but you only really need 1 copy since it's hard to make. While I don't recommend running multiple, its first effect is a soft once per turn, so you could technically use it twice if you did have 2 copies out. Still, that is usually too much of an investment, so 1 should just be fine. Then run 2 Trithiovertum and 2 Dracostapelia, since they're not very hard to make but they add a lot of power to your end boards. Then since we're running Branded Fusion, Rebellion and Mirror Jade make it in, although I do tend to make the Predaplant fusions early on instead of a Mirror Jade, since otherwise they would take up more extra deck space to give Mirror Jade targets to send from the extra deck. You could cut some other duplicates for a second Rebellion there of course. Finally, as long as Verti is still around, you might as well put it in this deck. Even if you'll quickly be locked out of it, it can help unrig some of the worst hands, or to play through some hand traps, so it is worth the space. If it's banned though, don't really worry since it's not necessary at all for the combos. As some extra things to consider, Predaprime Fusion isn't exactly a great card, but it can help remove some opponent's monsters. More importantly, it's a Predap card, meaning it's another searchable fusion spell, even late into your combos. Try it out if you like, because it makes stuff like Saracenian a lot better. Also, Linkuriboh could be a good replacement for Verti Anaconda if you run 3 Biblisp and are worried about bricking on it, since it would let you link it away to then search whatever you need. So that's the deck. Now let's take a look at what it can do. So before I show you a few combos, if you've been enjoying the video so far, make sure to give it a like and subscribe to the channel. In this first combo, I want to show you what you can do as a Branded Fusion, a monster to discard, and then anything else also as a discard. Start with Branded Fusion, send in Biblisp and Albaz to make Rebellion, and then Biblisc will trigger to search, which you can also chain block with Lubellion's discard to fuse. Search an Aphris Scorpio, and summon Dracostopelia with Albaz and Lubellion. Now you can summon Scorpio to discard a monster, searching Ultra Polymerization by summoning Cobra. Pay 2000 life points and fuse into Ambulé Melodies, searching a Buffet. Then trigger Ultra Poly's Graveyard effect, getting back both materials. Tribute one of those materials to get out a Sundew. You can fuse itself and the other non-fusion to make a Chimera Aphlesia. Then Buffet's fusion effect can turn both fusion monsters into a Predator power. You'll end up with Dracostopelia. You can negate something by putting a Predator counter on it, and then negate something else with Predator power, tributing the opponent's monster that you just put a counter on in the process. Now some test hands. You'll want to start with Lonefire into Scorpio, using its effect to discard your Edge Imp to get a Cobra on the field, and then Frightfire Repair in the hand. You'll also search your Ultra Poly, and a normal Poly plus Edge Imp chain using Repair. Ultra Poly makes Ambulé, who searches Predator Practice, which you'll use after getting both fusion materials back onto the field to summon out a Sundew. Tribute a material for a Saraceniant, and then use Sundew to get a Chimera Aphlesia while searching a Triantis. Poly into Predator power, and then start doing the same branded fusion line as in last replay, discarding the extra Edge Imp, and then searching a Bansky Ogre from the Biblisc. You'll make a Dracostopelia before setting your scales. You may as well also Pendulum summon the Bansky Ogre. Buffet's fusion effect will use itself and the other Pendulum card and a monster on the field to make a Trifio Vertum. The Pendulum monsters trigger to add Triantis back to the hand, while spreading Predator counters everywhere. This not only powers up the Trifio Vertum, but also gives you something to tribute to its Predator power in case you need it to negate before you're able to activate Dracostopelia's effect. Plus it will also give you a second round of Predator counters if you choose to tribute the Bansky Ogre. This third hand will start with the branded fusion play again, but instead of a Dracostopelia, make an Ambulé Melodies. To do this, you'll need to discard a Predator plant, so discard Triantis. During that play, make sure to search both Pendulum monsters, which you'll place before using them to summon Scorpio. That will discard the Edge Imp to get a Cobra, who searches an Ultra Poly and a Patchwork, letting you chain block whichever you think is the most important. Patchwork gets you another Poly and an Edge Imp, and then Ultra Poly can be used on both fusion monsters to make a Predator power, before getting back both of them. Pendulum summon Chain, and now with 3 dark monsters on the field, make a Trifio Vertum. You can then Poly the 2 fusion monsters away into Dracostopelia, before fusing both Pendulum monsters into a Greedy Venom, getting back a Triantis and placing counters on everything, boosting up Trifio Vertum to over 12,000 attack. If you're worried about Greedy Venom blowing up your own field, you could instead make a Starving Venom to destroy the opponent's monsters when destroyed, or just a Chimera Aphlesia to search a fusion spell if it ends up in a graveyard. Finally, I want to show you a hand that doesn't start with branded fusion. Start with Patchwork for the extra cards, which gives you discard fodder for Scorpio. This time, Cobra can search branded fusion instead of Ultra Poly. Instant fusion would then get you an Ambulé Melodies, who searches Buffet. Then branded fusion can send Albaz and Biblisc for Lubellion, who discards the extra Patchwork to make a Dracostopelia. Biblisc searches the other half of your scales, which you can then set. Tribute for a Bansky Ogre, which if your opponent had anything on the field, would spread counters on it when you fuse it into a Trifio Vertum. Then Pendulum summon out your hand, before using Sundew's effect for Rafflesia. That searches Predator Planning, and then Buffet can use its fusion summon for a Starving Venom and a ton of counters placed on everything. Now going second, you have more than enough attack to 80k, especially with Starving Venom's effect and Rafflesia, who can also banish something to make going for game even easier. So that's the deck! Are you excited to try out the new powerful Predator Plant deck? Tell me in the comments below, and while you're down there, don't forget to like and subscribe. Special thanks to my Tier 3 patron, Distran, as well as my Tier 2 patrons Jason Murat and Violet Vane. The link to that is in the description. Thanks for watching!